Hi, and welcome to Serenity Now, a place for entrepreneurs to ask questions, learn, get connected, and be inspired. Join us as we talk about all things business and the search for the ever-elusive Serenity Now in both business and personal life.
Welcome to another episode of Serenity Now for Entrepreneurs. Today we are going to talk about negotiations. Let's make a deal. Anyhow, today with me we have Rita Kim. Say hello. And Candace.
Hi, Rita. Hi, Peggy.
So we're gonna just dive into this subject. We found an interesting article online, Stanford Online, one of my favorite resources, and the credit goes to Margaret A. Neal. She's a professor at Stanford Graduate School of Business, and she talks about negotiation. And she says that we tend to picture negotiation as a standoff, two people on opposite sides of the table, one trying to outmaneuver the other. And she has some different views on that. So let's just get going on this conversation and see what comes up.
I'll start. I'm going to throw this out. So when you hear the word negotiation, what comes to mind, or what emotions or what thoughts race through your mind when you hear that word, guys?
I freak out. I'm not good at asking for what I want. I don't know why or how, but
Oh, geez. I'm kind of surprised to hear that. I'm surprised.
you know what? If I'm in a position to tell people what I want, no problem. But if I got to go to somebody else and ask them and they can say no for whatever reason, it freezes me in my tracks.
Oh, I think that's really common. I do. I think it makes us lack confidence in what we're asking for. And I think sometimes it's because we haven't thought it out well enough. We haven't given it sort of the same attention we would other things by building a little plan before you go into negotiation. What are my boundaries? How am I going to frame this so that it doesn't come across as a demand, but rather as a negotiation?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go back to Candace and kind of some of the feelings around that. I think maybe some of this kind of stems from past experiences when you went through different things. So as women in leadership, in business, negotiation sometimes was a strong arm tactic, a drinking fest or something else, and where it was, all about winning. And I will crush you with my negotiation, right? I will not just win this negotiation. I will crush you. I will eat you. Like, these are kind of things of the past. And, maybe some of it stemming from there.
Could be.
I definitely think that there is a different methodology used now than we've seen in the past in negotiations. And I do think that strong arm approach is still used. I think it's very evident in the news these days. But I think what this professor is suggesting is that we shift our perspective. We shift it from becoming a battle to becoming a collaboration, a problem-solving exercise. And sometimes if you can think of what do I want and what do they need and how do we get to a place that's good for both of us,
Acceptable. Yeah.
right? I think that's how, everyone knows you need to make money. I remember this one time my brother had done this, like a landscape job for this one client, and he kept asking for this and asking for this and asking for this. And my brother's like, holy, he's not going to like this bill. And I said to him, well, he's a business person. He knows that you have costs. He asked for all this additional material to be put in. He knows you have to make profit on it. So the best way to go about it is to not just dump him a number, but give him a number with explanation. Say, here's the cost of the soil. Here's the cost of the grass. Here's the cost of this. Here's the cost of this. And yeah, here's my price to you, which includes my profit. So, I think sometimes we're afraid to ask for a price because we're afraid of, people getting gobsmacked by the amount of it, right? And especially, I think, too, Candace, in your industry, I've had that price shock when I've got a one number bill from my accountant with no explanation of the cost. I think if people understood how much time was spent, of course you have to pay people. Of course you have to make money. You're not doing this out of charity, right?
Yeah.
So I think that goes to, sort of justifying it, right?
Absolutely. And we've changed the way we present bills to clients just for that reason. They get a very clear explanation of what we're going to do and what the cost is going to be, and they know what to expect up front. So
yeah,
then it works out a lot better than the gobsmack at the end, as you put it. But
yeah, that's the worst, when you really are knocked off your feet by something like that. That's actually kind of outside of a negotiation, but it is in some ways the same sort of feelings that, people have when they see a bill. In negotiation, I think the hardest part is getting over yourself, right?
It's funny when we were young, our dad, well, there's 4 girls in our family, and my dad always wanted to make sure we were tough cookies, right? He's like, I don't care if you're girls, like, I need you guys to be tough. So one of his things was, if you don't ask, you don't get. And then I remember saying when I was very young, I'm like, well, I don't know, I'm a little scared. And then he's like, well, what's the worst that can happen? I said, they say no. What if they say no? And he's like, and so we got past it really fast. Like, oh, okay. So no, that could be the worst that could happen. Okay. So now we can move past that. So sometimes it's just saying that out loud and just getting past that. And then it's like, let's figure out, what is it that we actually want? What are we working through or working on? So Peggy started on this before, and what is the fallback if they say no? What is, like, do you have like a contingency or a minimum acceptable outcome? What could you stretch it to? So we've got to walk in just like we'd walk into anything else. We want to prep, we want to plan. And when we negotiate, growing up, and my husband and I, whether it's buying a house or looking into business or doing investments, we're a very fair negotiator. We just simply say, let's take a look at this. What are you looking for? What are you asking for? And if it sounds fair, we just say yes. It sounds really counterintuitive, but it's true. It's like there's so much more behind the negotiation that happens. We worked on a deal with a house and we said yes. Some minor adjustments, very, very minor. But for 3 more years, we had the old owner helping us. So that wasn't part of the negotiation, but it came through. So sometimes you'd get surprised. So what is the purpose behind the negotiation?
Sometimes you have to enter into it with the idea it has to be a win-win. Not just a I win, you lose. We've negotiated a great deal. It's got to be a win-win. And a wise person once told me that a win-win is defined by both of you walking away with a little bit of a loss. So no one gets all that they want. Everybody gets a little less than they want, but you're at a place where you're happy. And that's the kind of deal that proves that both of you won. It's based on one person not having the power in the conversation. And I think that's really important.
I think the other thing too is, depending on what you're negotiating, is like, if you look at buying a business or if you look at selling a business, you can say, I want this and I want this. And what is the first and foremost thing that you want? I actually need to get this done as quickly as possible. That means I can maybe say, I don't need the highest price, or I don't need all these extra pieces. But what I really, really care about is I need to do this fast. So sometimes you go through and say, I need all of this, but then you actually think about, what is it you actually really need out of this?
That's a good point. Just don't always go for the highest price. Sometimes the other aspects of it are as equally as important, if not more important.
I've had situations where clients are negotiating for things that they don't even understand why they want them. Just somebody told them that that's what they should have.
Oh.
And so they let deals fall off the table because they want that small business deduction. And you're trying to explain to them, no, it doesn't matter. You don't need it in this circumstances. Obviously it was a defined set of circumstances, but it's like, no, it's going to work out fine without it. But they've got it in their mind that they absolutely need the small business deduction. So it's, maybe understand why it is what you want, why you want something, so that you're not stuck on the details, I guess. I don't know how to articulate that, but
No, it's true. It's going back to kind of the negotiation of power. Like, it's the deal, it's the power, it's all the other things versus, hey, what are we trying to get out of this? What is it that's going to make sense? And there is always, if you actually look at it carefully, there's always going to be a win-win scenario. And you just got to work through that, or maybe work through the emotions, or maybe work through the fear, or maybe work through the thought process a little bit before you go to that next step. And this is why when we talk about selling a business, there's always, so I've done a few hundred of them, and there's always 3 hits. There's always 3 tries. So round 1.
I agree with that.
Round 1 is like buyer's remorse. Okay. Round 2, seller's remorse. Round 3, everyone calms down. Go, this is what I actually want. I think we can figure this out. And sometimes you can do those round 1, 2 with a friend, with a partner, or somebody else, right? Versus, going at it like that. So
one thing that she talks about in this article is that she says, ask and explain why. So she said, we hesitate to ask for what we need because we talked about already, fearing, judgment or conflict or out and out rejection. But people are far more willing to say yes if we give them an explanation. So don't just say, I want this. I want this for these reasons. Help people get some insight into your request. Help them see how you're justifying what you're asking for.
I think that will also solve the asking for things that you don't really know why you're asking for me. If you understand what you're asking for and why you're asking for it, then sometimes maybe
Maybe you don't ask. Maybe you don't ask in the first place.
maybe you don't actually need that, small business deduction.
There's also you can have somebody come in and negotiate for you as well. You can get a facilitator. So guess what?
Yeah,
I'm just going to pull this whole thing away.
There are people who are experts in this, but there are small little things every day, everywhere in our life that require negotiation, whether it's dealing with an employee or whether it's a personal purchase or whatever it is. And there are experts you can hire, but there's lots of times when a negotiation is between two people trying to get something done. So that's an interesting that you can apply these concepts to that kind of situation as well. Another thing she talks about in here, when you're talking about the bigger deals, she's saying negotiate in packages, not pieces. So bundle together everything because it allows for trade-offs. And you talked about it, Rita. You talked about price and getting the owner's help for 3 years. Maybe that wasn't explicit in your deal, but it kind of went along with the components of your deal because the price was agreeable to him and you needed the help. So those kind of things, they allow for trade-offs if you bundle things together. When you only ask for one thing and then ask for another thing in separate little pieces, perhaps you don't have the options.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My husband does that, actually. Now that you say it that way, he negotiates and deal. Like, we negotiate a landscape thing. And then the landscaper gets here. And then he goes, and I want this and I want this. And it's just like, oh my God. Like, well, the price is different. And it's like, well, because you asked for 10 more things when he showed up. Like, of course it's different.
Yeah, she says it reduces, the sort of that back and forth friction, and it avoids the drain that you get from constantly having to renegotiate things that, people get a little tired of that. So that goes back to planning, and it goes back to looking at the big picture and going in with a plan when you go in to negotiate something. Every business, even small contracts like we have, require some sort of forethought because there's always going to be a reason the client wants something the way they want it and we want it the way we want. So meeting in the middle, you can't just say it is like this, period, or you may not end up with that client. So what's that client's value to you? And, do you need to budge on price, or can you change the parameters of the service contract, or whatever it is that helps both of you to win in the situation? I think that's the goal.
It goes back to what I said earlier too, as well. And what we've been kind of talking through is there's always a way to figure out a win-win. There's always a way to figure. And you know what? It feels good. And when I work with clients, contractors, anyone, it doesn't really matter. We always work on a win-win scenario. It doesn't feel good to us to say, I'm going to get you for all this or something like that. Like, that thought process doesn't work in my brain. It just doesn't fit. It doesn't compute. It's how can this work so it's a win-win? Whether it's us selling eggs for $5 a dozen, but I feel good because I'm giving help and support to the community and they're farm fresh eggs. There's nothing in them. I'm not winning by any stretch of the means, but, by paying off what we did to set up everything. But my win is I get to see someone happy. Their win is they get some good food. And so it could be as simple as that.
Yeah, I think you can still encounter people who go into negotiations with a mindset that they're going to win.
Then you also can make a decision. Is that the kind of relationship that you want? When we start seeing what we call takers, then we're just not interested. And you find that out pretty quick. You don't even need to do a couple of rounds. It's just a couple of conversations. You don't even need to even hit the negotiations. Just a couple of conversations. You find out pretty quick. Who was I talking to the other day? They're like, oh yeah, heavy duty mechanic. 30 plus years in the industry, goes, oh, well, can you just take a quick look at this? I just need a minute of your time. To him, you guys have heard this, right?
Yeah.
And he was just like, no, that's the end. But if you actually came across the other way around, hey, can I make an appointment? Here's the situation. And I know I can trust you with this. And, I don't know what the cost is, but can we have a discussion on this? It's a very different approach. And I get really tired of those people that I just need a minute of your, well, you know what? Don't you do some pro bono work anyways, Rita? Like, hey, I can get your name out there if you help me do this. And so,
Yeah.
so you're like, no.
My version of that, Rita, is like the last 2 weeks of April, all the clients that call to drop their tax return off like the 10th of April. And they're like, but it's simple. And I'm like, so are the 500 that got here before yours.
They say it, but it's simple. It's easy. It won't take you much time.
If I had $1 for every client that said that to me, oh, but it's simple. Shouldn't you just be able to do it like really quick? And I'm like, I'm sure it is simple, but I had 400 people show up before you.
So yeah, there's some things that you can negotiate yourself out of because there's no requirement. You don't need that relationship as well.
Sure enough. So her sort of wind up comments in this article are that developing skills of negotiation don't require a new job title. It just starts with clarity, intentions, and the courage to speak up. That's the one a lot of us have to work on, the courage to speak up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If you don't ask, you don't get. What's the worst that can happen? They can say no, maybe. And then move right along and see what else might work for you.
So when you run into that bully who wants to make a deal with you, that's a win on his side and not, what do we do, Rita?
We take a step back. I don't need to work with the takers. I'm good.
You're right.
I like win-wins for all. That's the negotiations that I like working with.
Absolutely. I think it'll be easier for me because I really like the way the article starts about reframing it as a collaborative problem solving.
Mm-hmm. And we solve everyone's problems all the time in our position. So
I can solve problems like nobody's business.
We can do this. There's always a way to figure out the win-win. Always.
Yeah, I work in a fairly competitive field. People market in this business. And I don't have to do that now. I'm established and my clients come to me through contacts and whatnot. But early in the game, I always remembered that negotiations were horrifying because you were afraid if you lost, they'd just go somewhere else. So I think I was giving instead of setting a boundary and saying, I can do it for this much. And I don't know that I put a real value on myself because I was so busy worrying about losing the work. But later on, as I got better at that process, I would start saying, we're in it for a long-term relationship. We're not in it for, I'm going to use a term that I would never say to a client, but we're not in it for the slam bam, thank you, ma'am, kind of one time round. We don't want to care if we ever see you again. I would say at the beginning of the whole thing, look, we're in this for the long term. So let's try to find something that works for you and for us. And we can be your R&D department. We can be the ones that create that, you have the comfort of knowing we're there to do the claim with you every year. We're a department within your firm. And clients really liked that because they knew I wasn't going to just try to go in there and get the biggest fee I possibly could get and then leave them high and dry. So that was a really good negotiating tool for me. And we were fair, like you say, Rita. We were fair in our pricing with our clients. And it's meant that we have had some clients for like 25 years more, probably. Definitely.
Yeah, that's an incredible testament, though. It's an incredible testament to the business, the work, the quality, and how you handle and manage your relationships, right? So is it so annoying to restart a relationship these days? Wouldn't it be easier to just go, Peggy, she already knows us. I don't have to tell my story all over again and then do this. Then they turn to you for other pieces of the puzzle too. Peggy, do you know someone that can do the other side of the taxes? Peggy, can you someone for strategy? Why we work well together. Exact same thing is when somebody comes into us, we never just talk about one piece of the puzzle. It's not transactional. I just can't repeat what you said because I'll just burst out laughing, Peggy.
I had to put some levity into this conversation.
It was us. And I did hear that so many times, right? And so, no, it's not transactional. It is a long-term relationship. And, 10 years later, I can go back to people and say, hey, how's it going? Because I know I didn't screw you and I can sleep at night. And we had a win-win and it feels good.
It makes you able to stop searching for clients all the time, which is just a wonderful, settled place to be when they come to you. That's it.
And your clients also know, and I've had my clients be bouncers for me too. They're like, no. You don't get to work with Rita. That's not going to happen. Wait a second. You didn't even let me have it. No, Rita. This is where they were coming from. And I know. And I believe you started like that. Do you remember how we had to work through that? No, that couldn't have been me. So it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun how it ends up, right? So, and then you're the bouncer for your partners. I'm a bouncer for Candace and Peggy. I'm like, no, you don't get through this. No, yeah. I'm your gatekeeper.
Well, yeah, I think that we're at the end of this discussion. And I think what we should do now is a little bit of a quick fire to see how this conversation settled with everyone and maybe if they have any additional thoughts. So, Candace, what are your thoughts on this?
I'm going to go back to the reframing the negotiation. I really like that. Don't think of it as a confrontation. Think of it as a collaborative problem solving exercise.
Yeah, I like that. I'm going to continue down the path of sometimes it's not everything on the list that you want or need. There's something at the top that is actually really important. And sometimes you forget that because you're so busy maybe looking at all of it. And it's like, let's just go back to what it is that you actually want out of this. And then how does it work so that it's a win-win? Those are my two pieces always.
Yeah, I like that comment you made earlier about you don't ask for it. You know what the answer is already? No. And what's the worst that can happen is no. But at the same time, I think going in with a good plan will likely ensure that you see less of those no's. If you know your boundaries, what you are willing to accept and how you can budge if you have to, and then justify your requests. I like that one too, because everybody has a reason for asking for a price. So I like it. I think she's got a good article here, and I hope it helps other people.
Yeah, I'd love it if you all shared some of your best practices for negotiations, or maybe even the reverse, a negotiation gone bad. Yeah, I guess at the end, negotiation isn't a power play. It's problem solving with a purpose. So whether we're just negotiating with self on when to get up or negotiating on the sale of a business, let's just put all of it back into perspective. So we hope that today's episode has given you, some thoughts or maybe some inspiration or maybe what not to do. And we just want to say thank you all for listening, and please feel free to share this. And if this has helped you, we hope that maybe you have some serenity now. Thanks, everyone.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and picked up some good tips and best practices that would benefit your entrepreneurial journey. Remember, none of the content in this podcast should be relied upon as standard legal or business advice. Always consult a professional for your specific business. You may know someone who could benefit from this podcast. Please share it with your business community, and perhaps it can give an entrepreneur you know some serenity now.